Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders and investors to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is a very special one. We have been trying to have you for a long time. Her name is Daniela Braga, the founder and CEO at Defined.ai. Daniela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. And you have an amazing story. And maybe the best way to start is to say that you are the human CEO who raised the most capital in AI in the world, 81 million so far. And also a good start to add to this disclaimer would be that less than 2% of funding goes to women. So I always like to talk about this, and sorry for such a long time without letting you introduce yourself, but I think that's the best way also to introduce you. I like to share those stats, which is only 4% of all companies get to 1 million in revenue, only 0.4% get to 10 million in revenue, and under 0.04% get to 100 million. So those numbers can be right or wrong, but they are more or less correct in terms of how difficult it is to scale a company from 0 to 100 million, which is what a VC package tries to do. And less than 2% of female founders are able to raise funds to be on that trajectory. So which you can apply the 2% times the 0.04% to understand what is the percentage of having a women founder being at post Series B like you are. So in that way, let us know quickly a little bit more about yourself and Defined.ai. We agreed that we'll not do a full presentation because you have several podcasts and several articles out there that people can see and watch. So we'll try to do this a different podcast where you can share different insights so other people can also learn from your experience.
Well, I think you touched a couple of points. First, how did I do this? I think that's one of the questions. And a little bit about my background. I guess I have an outlier background because I come from linguistics, and I did a PhD in voice technologies. So it was already AI. It wasn't called AI back in the day. But I did that movement from linguistics to engineering, which might sound strange, but actually is exactly what it's required in the AI world, where you need a multidisciplinary approach to things. It also, I mean, I've also have a background moving from academia, but not in spending enough time in academia to not ruin me, as I usually say. Enough, but not too much, and enough time in big corporations like Microsoft, also enough, but not too much, because I keep saying there's a fine line between passing that breaking point where you're no more able to think out of the box, to take risks, and to stay resilient. And we see that often, even with us. We have we avoid hiring people who have stayed too long in any place, because that's AI is such an area of evolution that you can never take anything for granted. You have to always come with a fresh look and not be afraid of seeing things 180 degrees differently. So I also have been, I have been privileged to move around the world. I mean, this was an opportunity that I was presented to myself, but I guess it also shows that not being afraid to experiment things like moving from Portugal to China with Microsoft when I had a 1-year-old
Wow.
baby. For a woman, it was a big deal, and I guess most people wouldn't have done it. And moving from China to the United States, where I landed in Microsoft headquarters, and also had the opportunity to experiment and to experience life in the politics in the headquarters of a big corporation.
Right.
All of this combined I mean, 3 years later, I've been in the United States for 11 years and out of the country for like now 14, 15. All of this combined gives me an attitude of risk-taking, looking at things always from a different angle, not being stopped by a closed door. I always say there's always another way, even when things look really dark and really impossible. You just have to take a deep breath, recenter yourself, and look and wake up the next day with white page, even if it's not, and you have all the baggage, but always with that fresh attitude of not being afraid. So I guess that's what explains that. But I do also say that it takes me, I mean, my male peers, when they're fundraising, they usually count how many meetings they've been having. I stopped counting because I know for a fact that I need to take 5 more meetings with investors than they do. I have to, it does with customers, it's maybe not as hard to get a meeting. It's still hard to close a business, it's especially to keep going. Yeah. And then you have all the difficulties of scaling a company from 10 people to 50 to 100 to 200 to 300. And those are the big challenges. Those for me are the biggest challenges, even more so than raising capital.
Right. Some highlights about what you just said, and just to give some context to the audience. So you come from originally from Portugal, Europe, then moved to China and the US. Really international experience. And I forgot what I wanted to say next, which is also always great. But anyway.
But maybe I can say what we do. Yeah. How about that? Well, so Defined.ai is the largest marketplace of training data for AI in the world, ethical data. And I want to emphasize this piece because it's we started already with that concern of being able to source data. And actually, back to the why did I start a company in the data space in AI? Right. I was I've been working in speech technologies and language technologies for all my life, really. So it's been 22 years by now. Since my academic background, I worked in my first project at University of Porto was building the first text-to-speech system for blind people in European Portuguese, which back then was an accessibility project. And today, text-to-speech is mainstream, and you see it on avatars, you see it on your Siri phones, on your Google Assistants, on the Alexas, and so on. So, the problem of data data became a problem when we moved from rule-based systems in AI, which was more coding back then, to training models through data. So we moved from rules to data-driven models, which was around the year 2010, the 2010 year decade, where cloud computing became a thing. And the first conversational AI systems started to come together, bringing the speech groups and the language groups, maybe. So essentially the people building voice technologies and the people building text technologies came together and started to build conversational AI, which is this more natural interaction with computers. So the problem of data and big data became a real matter in the AI world, and became and trying to get it consistent, trying to get it high quality and scale that was a challenge I was already having in Microsoft with my role at the time, which was managing the data, and at some point managing a budget of $14 million to collect data for 26 languages of the Microsoft products. And we couldn't basically spend the money because there was nothing scalable enough. First of all, we needed a lot of data, and we couldn't spend the money because there was nothing in the market that was scalable enough to collect, to amass all those amounts of data. Of course, the big 5 tech companies started to go on a different route by putting products out in the market where, like Google search and voice search, putting products out, doing voice search, and you start using them, but they were free products for search. And this was before GDPR, so data was starting to flow in for free without people's awareness and consent of what their data was being used for. But this was the reason why I started Define.ai, to create a platform that was sourcing simulated data in an ethical way, paid and consented, and at the same time allowing a representation of the demographics that to prevent bias in AI, which we know that all bias starts with data. And so this is basically what we've been doing. We still have our factory of data. We started to build a whole GitHub of data, which is our marketplace today, where people can go and buy machine learning ready, perfectly consented and paid for and transparent data to build models at scale. And you can buy it on a subscription, you can buy it on demand, and we bring partners who are sitting in large amounts of data, and for which we provide a seal of quality, a seal of trustworthiness, and we help them monetize their data in our marketplace as well.
Sounds great, and thanks for covering me on my lapse of memory some minutes ago. And what I wanted to highlight at the time was really your international experience, and also the fact that you started in academia, as you said, with a scientist background, and then you evolved into large corporates and started your own company. This kind of this willing, or this need and this courage to go beyond your comfort zone and always willing to make the difference is quite amazing. And in terms of stage of growth, where are you at, Daniela, with Define.ai?
So we're post Series B. We've raised capital in 2020. Was our largest capital raise so far, was 50 million. In 2020, in the beginning of the pandemic. It was a perfect timing. We raised another what we call a B+1, which is a sort of a bridge until Series C. I'm not gonna lie, the pandemic affected us. I think most businesses were affected. A lot of our competitors bankrupted through the pandemic. Wow. A lot. And a lot of our large competitors who are public traded companies replaced leadership, replaced CEOs, and stocks went down and revenues went down. So we did a bridge because, of course, we were hoping without the pandemic to raise, you usually raise a round of capital every 2 years. We weren't quite ready to raise a Series C after the 2 years. So we raised a bridge, what's called a bridge. Yeah. And we were able to actually secure, which was in line of our strategy, secure a government deal in Portugal under the Resilience and Recovery Program to develop a new portfolio product to basically reach the buyers of AI. So there are 2 types of consumers of AI in the world: the builders of AI, so the consumers meaning those who build AI, and those who buy AI, to decide not to develop AI but to buy an end-to-end solution. And we discovered over I mean, I've been paying attention, obviously. I'm in this field for 22 years. What was becoming very obvious is that there's only two countries or three, but with a very big gap between them. There's the United States is the biggest builder of AI. Last year alone, there was $93.5 billion invested in AI in the country. Mostly private sector, but some public sector. I mean, the DoD is one of the agencies that invests more in AI in the United States, followed by China. And I don't have the numbers of China in 2022, but I have the numbers of China in 2021. But in 2021, the United States moved from 55 billion to 93.5 billion last year. So 2021 to 2022, they doubled almost investment. Right. I expect that China did the same. China was at 17 billion of investment in 2021. I don't have the numbers of 2022, but I would expect they doubled it too, followed by the UK with 5 billion. And that's it. These are the only countries really building AI. Everybody else is so incipient, so small attempts, because there's a couple of things. For one, the new trend of generative models require amounts of data that are unimaginable. And for two, the computing required is also impossible. I mean, you gotta be a Microsoft, a Google, an Intel, an Amazon to be able to have the computing power to power generative models training. So everybody else is buying, and this is what we've been doing in our strategy. We are building end-to-end solutions in very specific areas that make sense for us and that we see a need and for which we have data in our marketplace. To build conversational, in this case, conversational AI for markets outside the United States, and soon to build other applications in the field of precisely to fill the gaps of the buyers, because it's the gap is really too big. Most companies, and we now have we're looking into the European calls, European grants in AI. There are some things that are interesting in which we can really contribute to the development of Europe. I'm really very passionate about having Europe catching up.
That's great.
In Europe,
especially after the numbers that you shared.
Europe is, I mean, and UK left Europe, so it doesn't count anymore. Europe is
but
nothing.
Even the UK, given the numbers that you shared, is 5% of the amount that the US is investing.
Absolutely. So being very passionate, I'm trying to work with the Commission and you have no idea how hard it is to find partners or have them to even be interested in working at a bigger scale than their 10 people companies. And this is the problem of Europe. We have to change the mindset. People need to be much more aggressive, much more risk-taking, more ambitious, but the investment also needs to exponentially grow. And I predict it's about 10 billion a year, and we are 10 years behind the United States catching up the wave.
Right. And that's a problem also of scale. We are seeing some movements especially for something that was very unusual at Series A, companies starting working on their M&A strategies and leveraging this moment of the market to buy some potential competitors or adjacent products that might help them to strengthen the platform or the core product. Do you see any opportunities there also for Defined.ai to try to buy and build?
Well, yes. In our Series C, which we are still working for, not this year, but
not talking about
very likely this year, next year. Yeah. Some of the strategies in Series C involve a merger and acquisition. So basically, looking at a complementary partner that we can join efforts. buying technologies or assets that make sense for our marketplace. Of course, and of course, continue to invest on our existing. Well, we have a very aggressive partnership program to bring as many ethical sources of partners to our marketplace. But like I said, we need to reach to the rest of the world that is not building and is buying. And maybe in a year, they will be able to build if some of these tools are becoming more, which I think it's the trend. We will start seeing more and more machine learning technologies being available to the public, on which you build on top of existing technologies, as OpenAI is doing that already, exposing their models that are pre-built, and you fine-tune them on top of existing large models that they are building. So this is where, again, we can continue to enable those, but right now the world is either you buy and you're very, very strong, and the market is moving towards an aggregation. You see less and less. So all companies making a stride are being acquired by the big corporations, and the smaller companies will have a hard time to last unless they really combine. But it's hard when you're a small company of 10 people, like I see all over Europe. Any ML company that is in Europe, they're 10 people, right. They're 4 people. It's hard to have the vision, the drive, and the network to combine efforts. This needs to be a supported effort with the European Commission.
Got it. And coming back to the initial topic that we were covering for the women executives that are thinking about starting their own company and are trying to find the courage to move forward. Am I prepared? Am I not prepared to start my own company? Or even for the ones who just raised the pre-seed round and are trying to raise a seed or a Series A. You said something in a recent panel in CES or CES, one of the main conferences in the beginning of the year in the US, that it was really important to you to have confidence and to have strong self-worth in order to be more effective in your fundraising efforts. So, and you shared different examples about that. So any tips based on your own experience raising all this capital for your vision of Defined AI that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. I keep saying that my secret power is knowing my worth since I'm a little girl. And I know that I had to hold on to something that I mastered. I usually say we women cannot spin being good at everything like men. Men comment on anything, they are good at everything, and the world listens. But us women, we cannot.
It's difficult to be on this side.
But that's the truth. You see men commenting about any topic and everybody listens, and they don't know. If they master one of them 50%, they still feel confident, and the confidence they portray is enough to get the message through. Women already come from a self-defeated mentality that is very much it's worldwide. It's very much supported by millennia of having women put on the sidelines and removing economic power and education from them. So obviously we're coming out from the 60s, 70s with the first women getting to college, being allowed to vote, working, joining the working class. So we're talking, it's the discrepancy. It's very, very difficult to obviously reach. But this is what my secret power was, holding on to something that I mastered, and it became AI over time. But it started with my academic excellence. I was always very competitive and very very proud of mastering my academic excellency, which is not enough, of course, for anybody, men and women alone. You you start, but for women, I mean, women oftentimes resort to the traditional, to the beauty, to the youth, and those are not resources that last, nor give the credibility you need in the business world. So, and even if you are a celebrity and a model and a top model and an actress, actually on the actors on the Hollywood world, you see how many women complain and talk about how their net worth decreases every decade, while men keep high and continue to go up. So pay scale is another problem in any world,
sport,
including in that world. So yeah, I would say hold on to something that you know, master it, and then learn the soft skills. And the soft skills are the power of networking is very important. I learned that very early days. In the beginning, you don't know exactly what you're looking for, but just by being open to listen to other people, to get to know other people, to understand how they think, how they live, it's so powerful and enriching, and learning to empathize with them. This usually is a very good passport to one day later, you reach out and people listen to you and open the door to you. So I think those two things combined, since we have our, and women are good at that, because women are better at emotional intelligence than men. They kind of read the other better. We're used to read that, to use our emotional IQ, our emotional intelligence for many years, for many millennia, to also get away with. So I think those two superpowers combined are very, very important. But that's not enough. Another thing that I also see is that women, oftentimes, like I have women coming to me and are starting a company. They also cannot expect, just because they're women, and there's the other extreme of women, that just because they're women, they expect to be given a break. We're not going to be given a break in business, regardless. Just because you are trying to fill in the quota, we're not going to, and they don't come prepared. And this is very often common with women. They have not thought it through. They have an idea. They're so early stage, but they have not, everything you do, you gotta be 100% prepared. Even in every conversation, if you're not prepared, you may as well not even show up, because you're burning bridges. And we women have less options, so we can't everything, but that should not discourage. We just have to do our homework well and get very well prepared for every conversation.
And that support network that you were talking about, and build your network as well. And there were some sentences that you said in that panel that really shocked me. So, for instance, something that you were like, scientists can't be CEOs. This can apply also for men and women of that background, but again, it affects more women. That's other thing that I really was shocked was I was encouraged by my investors to not have another kid when I had my daughter with 13 years old.
Absolutely.
So yeah, which is really kind of crazy in the world that we live today. And of course, we know that every single founder, and we were sharing the numbers, is super hard to build a company, and especially a VC-backed company is really the Champions League or the Olympic Games of business. And we know the odds are always against us, but especially when we apply those 2%, it becomes that it's even more difficult when we have another layer.
Two things, that like Daniela, you're not going to have any more children, right? Because that's not going to be good for your business and for the perception. That's one thing. But also the fact that it took me years to convince my board to support me in childcare. I am the one on the road every time. I am the one who has to show face. And men have the wives at home. And that's so for many years, I had to fight this corporate expense of expensing a nanny. This is not a corporate expense because men don't need a corporate expense like that. They have wives at home. And I had to fight for years to actually have a corporate expense approved. So like that with a nanny, which of course, in the last few years, it's been covered, but it wasn't, and it's not common. And I wonder how many women face those types of issues as well.
The good news, it is possible, and Daniela is here proving us that it is possible to get there. Still, so very, very difficult, and we want to change that, and we need to change that, but we need role models, and that's great that we have role models to look for and also to ask help for. And something also interesting that we discussed when we were preparing this episode of the podcast is how fast the world of VC-backed companies goes, right? So sometimes you are a little bit ahead of the curve and someone reached out to you asking for help, and maybe you are at Series A or Series B and they are at seed or pre-seed stage. And maybe our company as more late stage founder doesn't go so well, doesn't go so fast. And then those companies come raise a Series C and we were not able to raise the next round. So it is important, as you said, to show empathy and to stay humble and to not take it for granted and try to support others.
And to support other founders, especially if they are. So I understand, I mean, it's hard to be stretched thin with every request I get. But I tell you that every time I approached a more advanced CEO, I oftentimes have zero help. Especially, and I was as well, there's no women CEOs that I know that are ahead,
right?
But the men also don't help. And so I try to always remind myself that I have a lot of founders trying to reach out. I always try to make time for people. But I do want people to understand that if you go to talk with, if you talk to someone, you have to be prepared and you need to know what you're asking for, because every minute counts. But just to explain that there's very little camaraderie between founder CEOs as well. I can't say it's everywhere and everyone, but I would say 1% of other CEO founders, and which are men usually, actually are receptive, because they are not. And I would suspect that they're much more receptive to each other in the bros club, as I usually see and say, but they're definitely not receptive to talk with a woman's founder that is at the same level or a little behind them. This is another problem. But again, that doesn't change the taking. I usually say to have a seat at the table, you can't win it or deserve it. You have to take it.
Good one.
And that's, you don't expect the world to give you a seat at the table or men to give you a seat at the table, because they won't. You have to
ask for permission.
And so that's what we do, and that's what I do. But women have the fact that women don't have representation or a say in investment as well. So, and it's all over the place. So in VCs and private equity firms, M&As, anything that represents a growth or an exit, you don't see women there, barely. And the women who are there are the analysts. They are not the partners. They don't have a vote in the final process. But even if they did, I have to say that I was told by women, early stage women, when I was in early stage phase, raising my first million, and you see more women in angel investment, because that's where they are more in the angel. They don't have enough capital or influence to be in a later stage. Women are also not helpful to each other. I heard from one woman that I should tone down, that I should be less arrogant, which if I was a man, I would be called confident, but because I'm a woman, I'm called arrogant by another woman. This is very, very common too. And I also want to say that I'm where I am really because of men who gave me an opportunity. Because women oftentimes are the worst enemies of each other. They do not give you an opportunity.
Great insights. So we know,
and that we need to change that. I don't know why is that. I don't know why is that, but it's very, I think we need more women that made the path, that are confident, were in their skin, that don't, that we are now in a point to give back. But women are so concerned about competition in our small world of when we reach some place, that they don't help each other, unfortunately. Right. And this is valid for corporate world, where I've been, was the same story, and for investment world, and for peer groups as well.
Incredible. And we know that the agenda and the life of a CEO is quite complex. We have always more to do than the hours that we have in the day. And that's why what you said, when we are able to try to give back and pay it forward, it's important for people to show up prepared, so we can also give as much value as possible out of the constraints that we have, which is our time. Right? And something that is also important in that regard is how to choose well the right investors. So we can also take a lot of meetings that will not be the good fit, making us lose a lot of time. Any tips from your experience there on how to identify? And this applies to recruitment, board members in general, right?
So on that topic, my goodness, it took me 3 years maybe to understand the dynamics and the investors' capability, because it wasn't written anywhere. No, there's no playbook about these things. There should be. Maybe there is. I just haven't found it yet. And really, these are simple things like this. Start with, can an investor lead, or do they only follow? I can't tell you how many months I wasted on early stage investors that were all around us to get to the conclusion they can't lead a deal. And they are not respectful of the time they will make us waste under the assumption I did not know what was lead and follow back then. And the fact that some investors cannot even lead, but they appear as such, it's the first question anybody needs to ask. Can you lead? And what's the check size? So I know, what do I need to fill back in the followers? So that's the first question. And this is valid in any round, really, but you don't know that until you're there. And I wasted lots of time with lots of people that that couldn't lead. And then, second thing was, can you afford me? Because the second thing is, a lot of times investors are all over you, especially the early stage ones, but their check sizes are small, which is fine in the early stage, but they also have an expectation of a valuation that it's, I guess they're hoping that you run out of cash to pull the weight on the valuation they want.
Right.
But that's very unfair. You need to say, what's your expectation of valuation? This is a question that, and I know nobody wants to ask. This is very difficult, because it's almost like you're getting married with someone and you want to ask your partner what's the size of your bank account, which is really hard conversation to have when you're marrying. You leave those things for the last minute usually. but the reality is how do you assess in an elegant way that the valuation they're expecting, and they can afford what you're expecting, and the market out there you're not missing out on the market. And sometimes it's a timing thing. I mean, you can close on an investor because you want to get over with the fundraising, which is fair. It's a choice, and it's a fair choice. It depends on how long you can last as well. So all of those things are to consider, but there's no playbook telling you that. Then in the end of the day, what involvement do they want to have? Do they want to have a board seat, which can be a pain in the ass? Or, and if they want a board seat, how helpful will they be? Most investors only come with money and a lot of headaches because they sit on the board and they don't add value. And it's really hard
and
to
distract you.
Understand that. And it's really hard to understand. So there's ways to do that. You can call other CEOs who have been invested. You can take longer to get to know them. So this is why this was something I also learned to do. And I still don't do this very well, which is investors is like dating. You have to keep dating with them, even if it's only for the next 2, 3, 4 years that you're going to land them. Because you need to see how do they behave, how do they approach, what kind of questions, how doors that they open to you, meaningful introductions, whether they are business-wise or sometimes just association. I mean, sometimes all you need is a good lawyer or a good bank to back up, or a good consulting firm, whatever that is, or a good partner to, ideally a customer, which is very rare that they bring, or sometimes just healthy brainstorming, which is what a board member should do, is provide you with a healthy brainstorming angle without necessarily telling you what to do, because in the end of the day, it's up to the CEO to decide, and that should be the case, unless the company is so sideways that the board needs to intervene, and that's not a good place to be.
Exactly. And we know that one of the most important jobs of a CEO is to ensure that we have the right people on the right seats for each stage of growth. So the right leadership team. And this is especially more complex when we have kind of a diverse culture, or when we come from Europe to the US, given the differences of culture in Europe and the US, and the competitiveness or the crazy competitiveness in the US. There are some examples that I found very curious, and I was just chatting with my wife about it recently, which is how the Shark Tank is lasting for 13 years or 15 years in the US, and in other countries it is almost dead, which shows kind of the culture, the entrepreneurial culture. It's not because Mark Cuban is still there. It's because the audience is still excited about watching Mark Cuban doing investments and learning from investments, and having the desire to be there and become one of the founders pitching investors, or the sharks at some time. What are some of your conclusions? I know that we are getting short on time here, but I'd like to pick your brain on that as well.
Well, cultural differences. I'll have a lot to say about that, but I also want to say, since you mentioned Shark Tank, that I love Shark Tank. I haven't been following Shark Tank for a few years, but it was my training school before I started the company. I devoured every episode of Shark Tank in the year before I started the company. So just
we love it. Actually, I watch with my wife. That's the way we relax.
I remember thinking, oh my God. So if you actually can endure that, you'll be fine. So absolutely. And it's not, in the real life is not as bad. Of course, it's for the show. Yeah. It's not as bad, meaning the outcome is as bad. The real life is not as bad in the interaction.
It's Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, just less
offering you royalties.
No, but the cultural difference. I mean, I usually say my biggest challenge is always building a team. I can deal with investors, I can deal with resilience, I can deal with pandemics, and I can deal with all of of the above and difficult customers, but the team, oh my God. And what I've been experiencing is that by building a company in the two sides of the Atlantic, somehow I had the illusion that Portugal and the United States are not that different, and Portuguese people speak English. We grew up exposed to American culture. How hard that can be. I mean, in America, I blended in very well. How hard can that be? But it is. It is. So, and the worst is that it's a silent break of a silent gap of cultures, because people don't confront each other, especially the Portuguese. We're not a very confrontational culture. The Americans are very much more confrontational. So you don't debate the differences. You shut down and you do something else, and you don't enter in a dialogue. So, but I mean, both sides have amazing things. Both sides have not so amazing things. I'm not going to get into that. Maybe I'm going to talk about the positives. The US has the entrepreneurial spirit, the hardworking ethics, the creativity, the thinking out of the box, but at the same time, the US has, I'm not going to say it's a loyalty problem. It's more of a, people give up in face of a difficulty and start over. And so they don't, I think the resilience, I would say that Portugal has a much long enduring resilience to difficulty. People don't give up that easily. It's not a loyalty problem, even though it looks like loyalty because people quit and go. But in Portugal, people don't quit. That doesn't mean that they don't quit. Some do, but they quit less, but they don't speak up. So they suffer in silence, and that's worse. So I almost like, I prefer the direct approach of not happy, pick up or go.
Exactly.
And it happens at all levels, and leadership has a hard time to align mindsets, and it's very subtle. So the problem is it's very subtle because it's a number of values, but people just don't speak up or don't do a dialogue, open dialogue that actually. So yeah, it's been hard. It's been hard. We went through a lot of transformation during the pandemic. It was not also easy to triple the team during the pandemic when in a time where people were from home. So there's no culture that you can build like that. You bring a bunch of new people to a company that never see each other for a long time in person. I don't believe in a model like that, even though now we're all sort of remote. I think you have to build the face-to-face relationships to be solid.
What is the size of? Sorry, yeah. Sorry, conclude, Daniela.
No, just saying that we grew and we readjusted, because at the end of the day, I think, like following the trend of everybody, we realized that there was, especially the pandemic, hid a lot of unproductivity. A lot of what we're seeing is macroeconomics, but it's also the realization that people are not productive as they used to be. So we don't need so many people, all of us in tech, because they're really hiding under the comfort of their homes. So, and there's always those who work 150%, but there's a lot that don't. And the pandemic allowed that to be less visible. So this phenomenon of tech layoffs is a right sizing, considering what people are really producing versus what the company needs.
Right. So let's go to the last segment of the show, where I will ask you 3 quick questions. And you give me three brief answers, and that we will not talk about the resources today because I need to protect your time. So let's go with the first one. If you would have the opportunity to have a coffee with Daniela in 2015 or December of 2015, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Well, I would say, never forget to self-center yourself. I wasn't very good at that back then. Listen to your body. Sometimes when your body asks, give yourself permission to readjust, because this is a marathon. And back then I wasn't quite sure. I didn't know this was going to be a marathon. So the marathon concept hit me in my first million, when actually Sony, who led our first seed round, Sony in Tokyo tells me, do you understand this is a marathon? And I back then I didn't. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So you got to give yourself a little bit break, be a little bit easy on yourself. We are not, and us women, we're not usually. We are always putting ourselves in the last place of everyone, at the family level, and I am a mother too, at the company level, at everyone. You're in the end of the priority lane. And priority line, and this is what I would say to myself, and I still have to remind. I'm better at that now, but I still have to remind me that this is a marathon. You got to be kind to yourself often.
And what are you the most proud of on your journey so far, Daniela?
Oh my goodness, so many things I've been proud of. I'm proud of the fundraising, I have to say. It's a huge accomplishment. I mean, it's not alone to say that. I'm proud of the recognition, of the world recognition. I mean, the fact that I was invited by the President Biden's CTO office to join the group of 12. I mean, it speaks to, I mean, I come from nothing, and I'm an immigrant in the United States. It speaks to this world recognition of my expertise. So it pays off to be mastering a field, see? And I'm very proud of even though the team, and some people come and go, and this is the world, people come and go because a marathon is not for everyone.
Right.
That's the reality. And my journey is not their journey, but I'm so proud of the team I've been building over the years, and even those who are no longer here, of the fun we have together.
And to conclude, the worst advice ever received? To
tone down my confidence. Be more humble, Daniela. Be more humble.
We have mentioned here so many bad advices that you received that I was curious about the one you would be choosing to highlight. So that's a great one. Daniela, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. You are always welcome to share the next chapters. I feel that we have so much more to talk and to share with the audience. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure.
And to our community, thanks for being on that side. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier as you scale up your company. See you soon and keep scaling.